logistics, he carrying checks is the key. Innovating the process, can't you see? With the platform so smooth, keeps the workflow tight. Efficiency and value, I see every single night. Risk profiles, they got 'em, man, it's no joke. North America's the stage and they never choke. Metrics on point, updated without fail. Chameleon carriers, they're on the trail. Don't play with unsafe companies, don't be that guy. You carry your checks, keeping it safe under the sky. 40 plus filters with the search that can drive. Carry your information in the FMCSA archive. Find your carrier with precision and needs. Location, equipment, feeds. They got the keys. FTL shipper leads. They're right there for you. Real-time authorities, what they do. Crazy, breezy, ultimates. The dashboards away. Freedom from low boards. They got it every day. You carry your checks. The architect leading the way.
Good morning. Welcome to the E-Carrier Check Show. Jared and Nate here.
What's up?
Jared, happy hump day, brother. Good to hop on another show with you. It's always interesting to do this types of Wednesdays, kind of middle of the week update, kind of see, where everyone's at and kind of break down the week, halfway. So I'm interested because you got to sit on some calls with some brokerages. You've been in the brokerage here that's local quite often this week. And, anything that's kind of caught your eye, caught your attention. Anything going on in that world?
Yeah, you know what I love about Wednesday's show is that we really try to bring you, those things that are happening, in the trenches daily. Good morning, welcome everyone. Yeah, good morning. Because our ultimate goal is to educate people, and that's why we do the show. We try to keep it light and fun. We love our audience and the people that watch us, but at the same time, we hope we educate them, right? A couple things that I noticed this week that I thought were interesting were, that local brokerage does a lot of different, they focus on a lot of different sort of moves. It's not a van flatbed, reefer kind of brokerage. They really focus on, how do we help you with the weird stuff? And they seem to have a decent niche with that. But I think what's interesting, hooked to a liftgate trailer. The sun is shining around here. Dude, how much more per mile do you get with a liftgate trailer? I would love to know that because I frigging love liftgate stuff. Like, I don't know who's calling you for it, but I can't get enough of that shit. It's so good.
What's up, Adam?
Hey, Adam, DIY. What's going on, man? It's good to go. It's good to see you. But, here's what I loved about the brokerage this week. Some of the loads were kind of lighter this week. So far that I've seen, the load counts that they were doing were lighter. So it wasn't like they were having a popping week, but boy, they were really, really making sure that they were spreading their wings within their own current clients, helping them with any aspect or any mode, which I thought was interesting. And so if you have a client right now, I think this is probably number one, right? Is that if you have a client right now and you're just trucking for them, right? Adam would be a good example here. How can Adam expand his business? Is he can go to his current clients and find out how they move their other modes. Do some kind of client review with them. Hey, love to sit down and talk with you about what Q4 looks like, because this is a good time. We're about to kick into Q4, right? And then just see how they move other modes of transportation. And in Adam's particular case, maybe he can find a brokerage aspect to move some of that.
You're a big fan on reaching out to your current relationships and just asking those little questions. Yeah. Not only does it show them that you care about their business, but it shows them that you can add more value than what you're currently doing. Yeah. I know one of the brokers that you actually met with, he messaged me and said that his new customer, he wasn't really sending them a bunch of loads, but he was starting to reach out to them. Hey, how can I help you? Yeah. Anything that's, you're stressing over. And they're now just kind of sending him loads, daily to say, hey, get this covered.
I love that.
Like, he's performing well for them.
Yeah, I love that. I think the other thing, and we get this a lot, like carriers are calling them like, what am I supposed to say in these things? Tell them about your business and tell them how their business is impacting them. And I'll give you some examples. I give them a breakdown of costs. We're going to talk about costs today. They just had a new report come out. I'm excited to talk through this, but talk about your costs, right? Hey, here's how I come up with my rates, and here's the cost, right? They don't want you to go out of business. You're already hauling for them.
Right.
So they don't, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So they need you to be competitive, but
Mhm.
they also need you, right?
Yeah.
So tell them about your costs and then tell them how you impact them or they impact you. I'll give you some other examples. You know, if Adam goes to his number one and says, hey, your average days to pay this last month was 44 days instead of 36 days. Can you, 8 days is kind of different. I mean, there's only 250 working days.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That's 5% of the year. If you get added up in that extra additional days, that's cash flow, that's fuel, that's everything, insurance payments, truck payments, things like that, right?
Mhm.
So those extra days are interesting. The other thing I would do if I was a carrier is keep track of time, loading time. Hey, just so you know, last month you loaded me out in 44 minutes on average last month. The month before you loaded me in an hour and 20 minutes. I love that you guys sped me up. You got me in, you got me closed, and I was on the road a lot quicker this month. We only have so much time in a day, right? So carriers ask all the time, well, what should we say? I'm telling you, you've got to take the time to explain your business, but you got to kind of keep track of some of that stuff, right?
Yep.
Keep track of how long it takes. I'm looking, start relationships with reefer driver, got loads come on out of Chicago. Yeah, Joe, what's up, brother? What's going on? We met, God, I loved that guy. We met with a local Chicago guy this week.
Mhm.
And what an interesting guy. You know what I mean? If you were going to say, what was the first thing that stood out to you on that call?
I think what was more interesting is he knew what he was looking for.
Yeah.
And his willingness to go out and create relationships. I mean, this guy was grinding.
Yeah.
Trying to just hook up with brokers, trying to just reach out to them. I mean, he means well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People are overlooking this carrier. He's a great carrier. They got a bunch of assets, or they got a bunch of trucks on the road.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many miles they're, averaging a week, but they're all on the road. They're busy. He just was looking for more relationships,
which I loved.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about this as well, and some of the advice that we gave him, because he is looking. He had 45 trucks on the road. He's been running this trucking company for 20 years.
Right.
And I love kind of that. If you've never read this book, this is my favorite book, or one of my favorite books. Is there's a book called Immigrant Mentality, and it just is. It's all about your different mindset, right? These immigrants come into the country and they're like, "Hey, I burned the boats aren't there anymore. I got to work. I need to support my family. I've got to maybe support my parents back in their country, right? I've got to work." And he has that immigrant mentality. Loved this guy, and just trying to build some relationships and do what we do. So we'll share through that as well.
Yeah. I love how open he was too about. Let me see here. Send his info to me, or you can send him mine. Okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll definitely do that, Joe. I don't know if he had reefers. I didn't ask. I thought he had vans.
Let me look into that.
But we'll connect you to for sure, man. This guy was incredible. Just a good dude.
And they don't really have like a sales department, so he was really upfront and honest. Like, I just want to find more broker relationships. My carriers go here and here. I need to find more relationships in those areas that we're trying to get out of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll definitely see if there's a match there for you, Joe.
He did know exactly what he wanted. I mean, he started off the meeting. And for those of you who are watching, especially the carriers, he said, this was awesome. I mean, we couldn't have been 30 sentences in, 15 sentences in. And he goes, well, I need to get off the load boards. I'm getting, I think it was, how much was his percentage that he was getting off? I thought
it was like 70, 30.
Yeah, it was 60 or 50 or somewhere in there. And he's like, I got all these direct companies, but then I'm getting too much off load boards. He's like, I've got to diversify. And I'm like, here we go.
Yeah.
But you hit it on the head. He knew what he needed because he'd been tracking those little things as a carrier. I think it's really important that you go, okay, this guy loaded me in this amount of time, or this guy paid me in this amount of time, or, he treated my drivers well. They were able to park in there, go to the bathroom, have a snack. There's a difference when you're going to these shippers. Man, you just want to find somebody that treats you like a human.
Right.
heaven forbid we go to the bathroom and
Right.
and have a snack outside of our truck.
Right. Well, that's I think that's why it's the relationships are they're just not a thing that you see a lot right now. And it's like once you get to that relationship status with the shipper, the ability for you to have those conversations about your costs and why it's this and that.
Yeah,
it just gets easier. So if you're in the relationship mode, those types of conversations are a lot easier than contacting a shipper today and say, hey, I need this and this. It's like, well, I just met you today.
Yeah.
So,
can you imagine being on the road all the time?
Yeah, I couldn't. Can't imagine.
I gotta understand. Cheap freight hauler. Hey man. Hey, what's your favorite snack when you're on the road, man? What are you snacking on? I just think about I love Cheez-Its, by the way.
That'd be your snack.
I would be.
You're stopping at the gas or the
boxes
locals
of Cheez-Its.
You're getting fuel and you're going in.
Yeah,
you're getting Cheez-Its.
I'm buying boxes. I mean, it might be past boxes. It would be cases of Cheez-Its.
See, I'm more of a breakfast burrito guy. Like, let's load up some burritos. I don't know if every gas station has the kind of burritos we have here, but sign me up.
Oh my gosh. They got some burritos. I mean, those are the ones that burn you. But you take a bite in and the cheese pops out and burns your lip, and you're like, that's going to be on my face.
But when I do see truck drivers, I do see them grabbing here local anyways. They're grabbing sandwiches, stuff like that. Lemon pepper wings.
Are you kidding me?
Here's the next question. Bone in or boneless?
Yeah, I would agree. Let's just get into this a little
bit. I had a conversation with the broker about this yesterday, and we almost got into it.
Yeah, I mean, it got pretty intense, actually, to be honest.
I don't know how we got on that.
Lemon pepper wings. I love that. I'm a big wing guy, too. I've been doing air fryer wings. All right, let's break this down, though. I thought this was interesting. Articles came out. JBF Consulting put out a 2024 Q3 update. Obviously, we're in Q3, and it just breaks down the cost per mile for new equipment. Okay. And I'd be curious, for you drivers that are on here, how many of you actually have new equipment? Brand new friggin' out of the box new equipment. The guy that I used to work for at the carrier, he loved buying new equipment because then it was all under warranty. Right. But then there's the other side of it. It's like, well, you can buy used but you throw out something and then all of a sudden you got a $20,000 friggin' boneless wings, overpriced
boneless wings are
overpriced chicken nuggets. Yeah, I agree.
Gunner, if you're watching, there you go.
Oh my gosh, our overpriced nuggets. I love that. But here's the breakdown. So moving product on a new commercial truck in the United States costs $231 a mile on average just to cover expenses. Here's their breakdown though. For you carriers that are watching. So they're saying, if you're going to break even cost per mile, okay, 9% goes to repairs and maintenance, and this is including your tires, right? I don't know if tire killer's watching or not, but this cat always saved cash for tires and saved cash for those maintenance things. Mm-hmm. So 9%, 37% goes to drivers' wages, right? I would be curious for you company drivers on here. What's the average rate you're seeing, per mile? When I started, I mean, they were paying over the road guys 30 some cents a mile, which I know that's not the case anymore, but I'm just kind of dating myself on it, to be honest. It's like my dad was like, God, I remember when gas was a nickel, I'm like, I remember when drivers used to get paid a quarter. But there's driver wages are obviously one of the larger costs, right? Because it's hard to find good people. It's fine to find friggin', some cat that's willing to jump behind a liftgate truck with a liftgate trailer, which I love. God, I love that. 20% goes to fuel, which I believe, man, fuel is it's just so expensive. You know what I mean? And depending on the quality of fuel, this can jack up your rate per mile.
Right. I'm going to check out fuel on your carrier check to see where
it's just ridiculous. When you're driving down the road and you're averaging 7 miles to the gallon, I mean, whew. Now it looks like fuel's kind of coming down a little bit around the country, but it's still averaging. Look at that, 352 a mile. California, if you're from that area, holy cow, hold on to your buckets, 473. You know what I mean? That's a different size. 4% goes to insurance. 13% goes to the truck trailer lease or purchase, which theoretically, the feds could cut interest rates today. It could be a quarter, it could be a half. That may help with purchasing things.
Mm-hmm.
That may open up those people that have been looking or holding off to buy a trailer or truck.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So we'll see where that goes, right? 2% to permits, licensing, tolls, and then 15% on empty miles. Cheap freight hauler, obviously, now that I know you're a wing guy, how far are you willing to bounce for a load? This is an interesting 15% to empty miles. That's a lot. You know what I mean? And I know America's not perfect, and we are geographically challenged everywhere you go, right? The next load is never next door. Yeah. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be friggin' awesome.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you look at this and you're like, gosh, damn, a break-even price per mile is $272. Now, this is where it doesn't make any sense. Let me explain to you what doesn't make sense. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
So, contract rates, okay, and spot market rates. Remember what I just said. So the contract, they've been slowly declining. Now we're around $240 a mile, or likely can come down to $230. Spot market rates, they've been held around $2 a mile, possibly a floor at $1.85. You wonder why. Look, if you go back on ECC, and I know people can't see this, you wonder why carriers are going out of business.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, here's what I can say. And this is what I've noticed. And even like in the conversation we had with that cat out of Chicago, I think if you can start to build relationships, and that's what we're going to talk about here in a little bit,
mm-hmm.
is, what should be your strategy for Q4? Okay. And I think this is probably something, and then whether you're a broker watching the show or a carrier watching the show, or even a dispatchers are going to fall in here as well. You got 3 months to make some new relationships. Mm-hmm. Adam said something to me that was one of my favorite things that he ever said. How many trucks? Yeah, 821 trucks dropped out last week. Yep. That was through yesterday. That's a lot of trucks, man.
Yeah.
A lot of trucks, right? There was so much bloat because of the craziness through the pandemic, right? Too much up and down. But Adam said something to me that was probably one of the most interesting things that I absolutely love. Whatever it takes, about 700 miles, 600, but for the loads I'm pulling now have 0 deadhead miles. Deadhead. You see, this is what I'm talking about. You just reduced 15% of your costs on empty deadhead miles.
Mm-hmm. That's huge.
This guy's doing it.
Right.
This guy's doing it right, which I love. You know what I mean?
It's interesting. We do talk with a lot of carriers that sometimes they feel like they're taking loads that's not going to help them get to where they need to be, right? Like if they knew their costs, they wouldn't be taking those loads. So it's important to really take that into consideration what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
You don't want to haul a load that's not going to break even, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And you're going to end up in I got to tell you something. So we've called brokers before, right? We've called a ton of brokers. This is what we do for a living, right? And we ask them simply, do you use the load boards or not? 7 out of 10 say they don't. If they do, it's last minute and they're just getting rid of a load, or they need some capacity, right? And so if that number is at 70%, right? I'm about to suspend my authority, but that's because of the current lease on that I'm hooked up with. Yeah. So are you Tire Killer's about to suspend my authority, but that's because of the current lease on that I'm hooked up with. So are you going to are you jumping on with somebody new, Tire Killer? How you been, brother? Where you at? Gotta love that guy. Mm-hmm. This guy's my favorite. I would love to buy, an open face sandwich with him at a truck stop. Like, give me a hot beef sandwich.
And some Cheez-Its.
And Cheez-Its. Tire Killer, what's your favorite snack? Either way.
His wife cooks some meals.
She does cook him meals. I wonder how his weight is. Like, I wonder if there's a big difference between home cooked meals on the road the whole time versus gas station food?
I would assume.
There's got to be.
I would assume is, yeah.
And I got to tell you, let me relate that back to this, is why are we talking about giving carriers more what they actually deserve? Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's just what the market bears, right? Now, here's where I think, Zane, that's an interesting question and a perspective, right? The market's bearing what it bears. I can't control the buy and the sell, right? It's gonna go with the way it goes. It's no different than buying a stock, on the stock exchange, right? But here's, Zane, a couple things. And Zane, I don't know if you're a carrier or broker. I'd love to know. Love to know what you're hauling, if you are, or what you do as a broker or dispatcher. Either way, tell me about yourself, brother. Let's just hear it. But here's what you can do to at least minimize those rates. Is start to build relationships with those brokers that don't post those loads, right? Freight Master Resources. Look at this. Detention loss, 39%. By the way, I love this cat. I love that you're on, by the way. I hope you've been well. God, I can't get enough of this guy. Detention loss, 39.3% of deliveries face delays in 2023. That is ridiculous, right? Wow. Trucking industry lost $3 billion in direct costs. Productivity loses a whopping $11 billion. This is why I'm saying, when you guys go do your shipper reviews, you go call your clients and say, hey, man, I stopwatch every load and I write it down, or I put it on an Excel sheet, and it took an hour and 30 minutes to get out of this place last month, but the month before it was, 2 hours and 15 minutes. How do we get back to that hour 30? Look at this. $3 billion friggin' dollars. Look at that. 117 hours lost per driver annually. Now, logistics isn't perfect. This is always going to be something. But the biggest thing is addressing it and going up. And this is where I think carriers could get way better, is how do you control and how do you make aware of these things, right? Right. If you are a broker and you're working with those carriers directly, then you need to be a carrier that's working with those brokers directly, so that instead of getting $250 off a load board, you can get $255. Right. So you can get $260. Right. You're playing an averages game all year, Zane, because these shippers are looking for who can go the lowest. Brokers undercutting brokers just get work. Yeah, exactly. Nick kind of hit it on the head. Nick hit it. I love that you're on, man. What's up? I'm glad you're on. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to flow the way it's going to flow. Right. And eventually, I promise you, Zane, that the market's going to flip. Right. It's going to all of a sudden turn over, and it's going to go the other way. I wouldn't even bother making a call to a prospect if reviews from drivers are bad, especially when it comes to long wait times.
What's funny, you can see all those reviews on, like, if you go to Google,
dude,
you see a lot of fast loading.
Yeah.
Unloader just was a dick or something.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to read up on.
It really is. I wouldn't even bother making a call to a prospect if reviews from drivers. I totally agree with this. If you guys haven't, obviously you can see leads off you carrier check, right? But click into that Google link and just go to the reviews. And a lot of shippers usually have reviews from drivers, and I love that.
Yeah, that's good feedback.
I truly love that. Freight Master Resource. Hey, I would love to know. We should have this cat on again. I can't get enough of this guy. I love jiving with this guy. What are you seeing in the market right now when it comes to your loads specifically? Because he works for a huge brokerage. Great dude. Are you seeing that you're going to the board much? Or are you just using your current regular guys constantly, and then maybe 2 out of 10? Or is it the opposite? Your regulars are already booked, and you're having to go to the boards more. I'd just be curious from your book. We see the up and downs from every broker. So.
Yeah. What an interesting time we're in, man.
Oh, absolutely.
This is crazy.
Absolutely. I think brokers, if I was going to say, what are you going to do for Q4? Obviously, we've been talking about carriers, updating and giving those shippers that information. I would tell them that.
What,
this right here. I would call back to your shipper and say, hey, I don't know if you knew this, but here's the productivity loss, and here's me. Take it from this big level and just communicate it down to this level. And I think it's so important. 90% of my freight is dedicated, but booking spot loads is tough currently. Yeah. Yeah, 90%. I figured his freight was dedicated. Yeah. But I love that you have. How often are you looking for new carriers?
That's what I was going to say. That's one thing I think that was listed on there for a strategy for brokers is to more outreach to carriers, right? Yeah. You're a big fan of this. You're always a fan of taking a break from cold calls. So yeah. Let's just go call carriers.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on. Build a relationship. Build a network.
Yeah. Huge. Yeah. I talked to a carrier yesterday from it was from Southern California. Nice guy. I said, how are things going? And he said, well, here's how I'm winning freight right now. 40% of his business is dedicated. Okay. 60% is spot loads to get back to his dedicated. Okay. And he's really just struggling with those spot loads. He's kind of like he told me kind of what Chief Freight Hauler said. He's like, some days I almost feel like it's not even worth the fuel. Right. He's like, I should just turn around and go home and get my other load.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
Always looking to build new relationships. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's a top tier broker, guys. You know, this cat, Freight Master Resources, he's a good dude. On boards, it's leftovers, and that's like some places van is lower than $1 a mile. Yeah, man. You come out of Denver, and it's brutal. I mean, I know you got paid well to go in there, but
just getting out.
It's getting out is brutal.
Sure.
So, but I do know, like I was talking to a shipper over in Denver. Mm. You know, I was like, hey, you know, can you tell me why your company? And it was a big mattress company. Okay. And I said, why? You know, obviously you went to Denver so that you could try to minimize your guys' transportation spend. Mm-hmm. So they rail all their mattresses in. They come in from like India.
Okay.
Rail all their mattresses in. And he goes, you know, if it goes out on a board, you know, I'm going to pay $1.10, $1.13 a mile. If a carrier calls me directly, I'll pay them $1.18 to $1.20. Mm. And it was kind of interesting to hear that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know, so those relationships are out there. At least it can salvage something, right?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That shipper looked into it that deep. You know, most of the time I feel like shippers are just like, yeah, you're the lowest. Okay, sure.
Let's just go. Yeah. But I loved it. I loved every second of it. You know, from a broker standpoint, and this is something Adam talked about, around COVID, and then I started reading the things and I get ADD. He said that he goes, during the pandemic was the best time to talk to shippers. And so I loved his optimistic look right now. So if you're a broker, this is the best time to talk to carriers. Go build some of those relationships. You know what I mean? It's going to flip flop and it'll be the best time to talk to shippers. But right now, best time to talk to carriers. How can you help them? How can you, go from there and let them either help them understand their costs, help them understand how to find better fuel purchases, tire purchases, whatever it may be, so that they can keep, trying to lower those.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what those conversations would look like if a broker were just calling up carriers, kind of figuring out those questions. Obviously no one wants to waste anyone's time, but I was just kind of curious on what those conversations would sound like.
What is afraid? That's why I'm staying where I'm at, because we get paid to deadhead back to the plant for another load. Exactly. That's exactly it. Like you got to find those good trucks. We have everybody dedicated on this show. I don't know. Why can't we get anybody that's living off the load board? What do you guys think the best approach for making relationships with shippers? Right now, boy, Zane, this is such an interesting question. We have made so many phone calls to shippers in 2024. Right now, LOL, I have a DV partial from Irving to Denver available to pick up tomorrow. If anyone's looking, let me know what you need. Sorry for spamming.
You're good, man. I appreciate that.
I love that. What e-carrier check show has become the best load board there is. You kill me. I love it. That's so good. I'm such a fan.
I'll leave that up for a second.
Absolutely. You might put some footage on there. Just see how, is it 20 feet and 12,000 pounds? Yeah. What is it? This is tough, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, as I say, to answer Zane's questions, to build a relationship, Jared mentioned this last week on our show, is, you have to catch that shipper's attention within the first, 15, 20 seconds, right? I mean, they're getting calls every day from freight brokers and sound the same. You got to catch that attention, but also you got to make it relatable to them. If it's not about them, I feel like they're like, yeah, what are we doing here? Like, I think more of it is just you got to talk to their industry and provide value really quick.
Yeah, really quick. I think too, Zane. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say.
Zane, the other thing that I think is really interesting is I think you have to take a long-term approach in this. You know, you're not asking for. The other day we made calls. We're actually going to put this cold call video out. I swear people think we don't we stage these cold calls. We don't at all.
Yeah, this should drop next week.
It'll drop out. We did cold calls and we called some people, and we had the opportunity. I was like, well, I asked a couple questions, and then I stayed curious instead of just asking for her email and phone number and say, can we be one of those people, right? And it extended the phone conversation almost 15 minutes because I was more curious about her business and I wasn't looking for that immediate return, right? So I think if you're playing the long-term game here, Zane, what do you guys think the best approach for making relationships with shippers? Number one is picking up the phone. Number two is just sounding different. And number three is following up with them without anything in intention other than building value with them. Hey, do you have anything to quote? No. Send them hey, what do you think of the Fed rates? I think you're going to start seeing trucks being purchased a little bit more. Or, hey, have you seen what fuel's doing over Q4? Educate these shippers. Yeah. You got to educate them and don't just sit there and go, well, what about me? What about me?
Right.
So,
well, the one thing with that call you made too, it's like, I don't know, maybe you found her on a good day. She was having a great day. Who knows, right? But you were able to ask some really good questions about their company and get a lot of information out of her. I don't think I've ever heard a sales call like that.
Yeah, it was wild.
So, like I said, you could have found her on a good day. You could call today. She could have a bad day. It did not go that way.
Yeah,
but
she could have destroyed me.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Are there any carriers out there still holding on to shipper relations made during the pandemic?
This is an interesting question, too. You know what I've seen is a lot of people moving around. Brokers have had quite a bit of layoffs. I've seen, the tech industry having layoffs. They all carriers are going out of business. So you see a lot of people kind of moving and changing their pond, if you will, if it's a game of chess, right? This is such an interesting question to maintain relationships through those ups and downs is really tough. And so it'd be interesting to know that.
Yeah. With this much unstable situation, no freight fuel high.
Yeah. I totally get it, Zane. I mean, it's a challenging market, and shippers aren't easy to talk to. We have a guy that we know that's just blowing out more phone calls than I've ever heard in my life.
Freaking machine.
And just not finding that luck, right? And so just getting out there, but being different and really trying to do more in face-to-face if you can.
Well, and I think too, something that you're overlooking that you mentioned last week, it's making sure you're calling the right people. Like, should you be calling this shipper or should be calling where they get it from?
Yeah.
So you got to make sure you're calling the right people for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I loved the show today.
Yeah.
We went a little long.
Very informative, though.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Went a little long. Guys, I hope you have a friggin' awesome rest of your week. It's Wednesday. Keep grinding. Keep trucking. Be safe, guys. If you get a box of Cheez-Its, think of me. And we'll see you guys Friday. Appreciate all the